Hi, everyone. I'm Stuart Glickman, Director of Research for CFRA Fundamental Equity Research. With me today, I have Keith Snyder, Technology Analyst for CFRA, and the topic du jour is the upcoming IPO for SpaceX, one of Elon Musk's latest forays. And because we have the S1 now, all 277 pages of it, we thought this would be a good time before the IPO to get some of Keith's thoughts about what is likely coming down the pike. Keith, welcome to CFRA Insights. I guess big picture on SpaceX, how would you characterize their current growth drivers, and do you think those are the same or different in the future?
Sure. So I would characterize it as, we have three distinct stages of growth right now. Stage one was the rocket launch business. And so that started a number of years ago. They revolutionized the business. Now they, control most of the market. Stage two, which is where we are now, is Starlink growth. And user growth has been incredibly strong, offering broadband and wireless access. And so, that's the stage of growth we are in right now. The launch business is reaching the pinnacle of what it can. And then phase three in the future is going to be their bet on AI. And they're betting very heavily on XAI. And we will see how that pans out. But, they see that as their greatest market opportunity going forward.
Okay, thanks. So if investors are thinking about SpaceX as an investable opportunity, should they be thinking about it as a rocket company or something broader than that?
So, it's kind of a Frankenstein of a company, if you will. They are a rocket company. So that would be aerospace and defense, industrials. That was, and, kind of in a way still is the bread and butter of the company. But, with that whole stage two growth, they're a communication services company with Starlink, which now makes up the majority of their revenue. If you look at the 18.5 billion in revenue they reported last year, 11.4 of that comes from Starlink. And so, that's now their biggest segment. But also with XAI, they're an IT company. And so when you're looking at it, it's, you're going to have to value it by a sum of its parts. But the way it started, which was SpaceX, launching rockets, is kind of fading away as the other segments grow larger and larger.
Now, obviously, it's early days. It hasn't been priced yet. What, if anything, can you say about the valuation for the company?
Sure. So, looking at it on its surface, they're shooting for about a $1.5 trillion valuation. If we take that 18.7 in revenue, that's 80 times revenue, which might seem very high. But if you look at peers, so, in the rocket space, the most direct peer would be Rocket Labs, which, albeit is not a direct competitor, they're more of a small launch provider, but they're running at about 120 times earnings, 120 times revenue. And so 80 doesn't seem that ridiculous. But then if you look at XAI, which is where the growth is hopefully going to come from, we haven't seen OpenAI's data yet, Anthropic's data yet, but we're expecting also sky-high valuation. So actually 80 times revenue doesn't seem that ridiculous when you consider growth opportunities and when you consider peer groups as well.
Okay, thanks. So when you've gone through the 277 odd pages that are in the filing, are there any, let's say, 2, 3 notable takeaways that you came away with after reading it?
Yeah, first and foremost would be the total addressable market that they've laid out. For AI alone, they say it's $26 trillion. Mind you, this is an Elon Musk company, so everything that is said within this report must be taken with a huge grain of salt. But if that pans out, that could be huge. The other markets are much smaller, but there is an opportunity according to the company. And the size of the overall market really stood out to me, and that's early on in the S1. Second would be CapEx. They're spending a lot of money investing in all three of their businesses. So SpaceX, 3.8, they're working on developing Starship, which isn't cheap. We should see a launch of that soon, or another launch of it, I should say. Connectivity, so Starlink, they're spending about 4.2 billion on. And then AI, which is clearly their biggest bet, was a spend of 12.7 billion last year. And so they're betting big on AI. It's supposedly going to be their biggest market. Whether or not that pans out, that's the trillion-dollar question in this case, of whether or not they can capitalize on that, and whether or not XAI is positioned to get some of that market share. And then third, this is more of just like a random fun fact I kind of came across, was part of Elon Musk's pay package. So he took home about $56,000 last year in just salary, but he has a stock option grant of 1 billion Class B shares if SpaceX develops a Mars colony and has 1 million people living on it, which kind of blew my mind of like who comes up with these things. But obviously from my point of view, probably won't happen in his lifetime. It could happen eventually, but I just thought that was kind of an interesting pay package structure for any senior management.
What would you say are kind of the big ticket risks or concerns that investors should be aware of?
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, it's going to be corporate governance. There are going to be 2 classes of shares, an A class and a B class. A class is what's being sold to the public. It gets 1 vote per share, like every other stock. B class is held by insiders and gets 10 votes per share. Now, Elon Musk will control about 85% of the votes. And so, we should really be calling it, Elon X, not SpaceX, because, he gets the final say in everything. There's going to be almost no way for shareholders to get a proposal over the line that he does not approve of. And so, that's a big risk to the company. Anytime you have management controlling that much of the say and direction of the company, it poses a risk. And so I would say, first and foremost, it's going to be how the voting shares are structured.
Okay. So we got the IPO coming up. I think it's in a couple weeks. What are some of the developments you think investors should be watching in the build up towards the IPO?
So, I mean, hopefully between now and the IPO, we will get data from Anthropic and OpenAI, who are also racing to file for an IPO. It will be interesting to see how they're valuing their AI businesses, which could shed some light on SpaceX's AI business. More immediate, I would say, is to watch the Starship launch. A launch window opens at 6:30 p.m. tonight, May 21st. And extends for a few days after that. So we don't know when exactly they're going to launch, but this will be the first launch of the V3 Starship, which should prove to be a pretty big upgrade over V2. It's a suborbital launch. It's just a demonstration. But SpaceX has some big contracts, especially with NASA, for what Starship can and can't do, especially when it comes to the Artemis program, which is NASA's rocket endeavor. And so that launch being successful would be a huge plus to SpaceX, just to prove that they're moving in the right direction, that Starship, which is what kind of they're betting the future of their rocket business on, is a successful craft. And I will be watching that with great interest in the coming few days and hours.
Thank you, Keith. So for folks listening on this video, just keep looking for more from us at marketscope.com. Certainly more developments to come and a very topical piece to think about. Thank you.